This video contains spoilers for everything up to and including the first phase of Arc 10, or Volume 44. However, it will not contain spoilers for the Prophecy of the Throne visual novel, despite the overlap and similarities. After an action-packed Arc 9, Arc 10 finally slows things back down, and returns the cast to the royal capital to tackle a brewing political crisis and a murder mystery. In a moment of desperation, Ferris agrees to receive help from the Church of the Divine Dragon to cure Krusch's condition, all but ensuring her defeat as a royal candidate. The one who heals her claims to be none other than Fyore, the missing daughter of the royal family previously assumed to be Felt, flipping the entire royal selection on its head. On top of that, the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, Roy Alford, is discovered dead in his prison cell, with no clues as to the perpetrator. This is an arc all about loyalties, deception, and suspicion. With the introduction of Fyore, questions of allegiance and people's true nature emerge. Secrets will come to light and bonds will be tested. And if I'm right, it may result in the return of the Archbishop of Lust, the attempted resurrection of the royal family, and the arrival of a long-awaited plot point teased in Arc 4. This is my first video covering a single volume, so I'll keep it nice and simple, going through the book to point out certain parts I found interesting, and any predictions when I have them. So, let's get started. The phase opens with a focus on friendships and alliances, as Amelia discusses with Felt how she wants to befriend all the royal candidates. Felt agrees, but it's hard not to think Amelia's insistence on being close with everyone is going to backfire on her in some way. She's a character who deeply values oaths and promises, and a betrayal or rift with someone she considered a friend will be devastating to her. And I know who that will be. We then shift to a conversation between Otto and Reinhard, which circles back to one of ReZero's longest-running themes. This idea of people taking up personas, projecting an image of themselves they believe they need to. Otto is a realist in a camp full of idealists. He frequently plays the bad cop to Subaru and Amelia's good cop, so they can get what they want. He's demonstrated that he's willing to do shady things so the others don't have to get their hands dirty. That's his role, or so he believes. In their conversation, Reinhard calls him out on this, telling him he doesn't need to go out of his way to feign such callousness. Others like Reinhard see through Otto's mask. I have to believe that this is set up for that mask cracking soon. Roswaal warned him of the dangers of constantly going against Subaru's idealism in Arc 8. It's worth bringing up that Roswaal himself is playing a persona too, probably the most obvious one of all the characters. And what do you know? Beatrice even compares Otto to Roswaal later in this arc. This all extends to Reinhard too. Like Otto, Reinhard feels like he has to take on the burden of the Sword Saint for the sake of the kingdom. It's a responsibility, a role he must uphold. As he says, "Regardless of my father's wishes, I am the Sword Saint. I have to be the Sword Saint." Not only do I think Reinhard's mask will crack too, I think this arc will be the culmination of the entire Estrella family drama, and that will be a central part of it. If Wilhelm's future trial line is taken at face value, Reinhard might lose his divine protection and be unable to use the Dragon Sword Reed. Just who is Reinhard without the role of Sword Saint? Before too long, news reaches the Felt and Amelia camps that Krusch Karsten is being healed by a nun from the Dragon Church, who shares the name and description of the long-missing royal child. Will Reinhard stay loyal to Felt, even with her identity as a royal descendant called into question? He says yes, and I don't doubt him, but that doesn't necessarily mean he'll be acting in accordance with her wishes. He's certainly no stranger to doing what he thinks is right for her at the expense of her feelings, and that's a topic this volume covers soon with a different character. Since her introduction at the end of the last arc, it's been speculated that Fyore is Capella in disguise, but the more we see of her, the less likely that seems to be the case to me, and I have an idea about that. See, 4 chapters in, we switch to Subaru's POV as he makes his exit from the sand dunes, and the concept of dream magic is introduced. Subaru speculates that Echidna could have used it to mastermind things, subconsciously implanting ideas into people's heads. Is it possible dream magic was used to convince her that she is the true Fyore? She could be another person physically altered by Capella to resemble a royal, while implanted with fake memories. Dream magic just seems like such a specific thing to bring up here if it isn't relevant, but I don't know enough about how it works to say for sure. Then, we get a brief moment where Reinhard watches Subaru from a distance, holding the hilt of his sword, the same thing we saw him do back in the very first arc. This seems to be some pretty obvious foreshadowing. We know from Arc 9 that the Dragon Sword deems Subaru worthy. I fully expect that this will be the arc where Subaru and Reinhard have a falling out, and that Dragon Sword may even be unsheathed against him. As Reinhard carries the carriage back to the capital, the Reinhard Law is brought up, which blocks him from leaving the borders of Lagunica. That prompts Subaru to think about Wallachia, one of many references to Wallachia. So many, it's impossible to ignore. It makes me think this is foreshadowing for an inevitable return, and that Reinhard will be involved, violating the law that confines him to Lagunica. Or the opposite. Something important will happen in Wallachia that affects the kingdom, and he'll be prevented from intervening. Subaru plans to get the Archbishop of Gluttony to restore Rem's memories, but when they reach him in his prison cell, Roy is dead, his body torn asunder. The obvious question here is, who the hell could have killed him? The most obvious culprit is Capella. She has ties to the royal family, which is a big focus in this arc, and has the ability to turn into a small creature to get through security. Her being a villain in Arc 10 seems like a certainty. That being said, I don't think she's the only killer. Take a look at this exchange between Subaru and Rem, where they discuss the difficulty of managing to unseal Roy and kill him. Even after getting him out of the monolith, you'd have to go at it against the Roy who'd rush out, go at it and take his life. In other words, it would be necessary to overcome these two stages. Neither of them float the idea of two killers, nor does Reinhard, but the emphasis on two stages gives me the impression that you need two different people with different specialized skills in order to pull it off. Reinhard even phrases it as 3 conditions, so possibly even 3 people. Capella is supposedly the head of a whole assassin organization, so it's not unreasonable she'd have multiple assassins to complete the job, which is what I think happened here. The other big question is Gluttony even really dead? His death could have easily been faked by Capella, who morphed someone else to look like him. Contrary to the chatter I'm seeing online though, I think he actually is dead. There's a very valid reason to take him out. Roy can be used to prove someone's true identity, which would be useful in an arc all about an imposter. Narratively, Roy was a big part of Arc 9 already. He had his big moments, we got his named chapter, we saw his very fitting, bombastic death. I think he really was killed because, well, where else can his story go? If he only exists in the story to restore Rem and everyone else's memories, there's Spica for that. We've already gotten a lot of references to Wallachia already, with multiple talking about Spica directly. Plus, as I mentioned before, I believe this arc will put Reinhard and Subaru at odds. In the Arc 4 trial, they have a parting conversation about a child who could be considered their enemy. Spica, as an archbishop, is a child who could be considered their enemy. Subaru said thank you to Reinhard in this arc already, as well as teaching him the English phrase, "You're welcome." In the future trial, Subaru says thank you to Reinhard, and we never get to hear Reinhard's full response. Compelling stuff, right? Not long after discovering Gluttony dead, Rem rebukes Subaru for getting so bent out of shape over it instead of her, giving us some echoes of Arc 3 with how he's making it about himself, and Arc 4 in the way he's trying to shoulder everyone else's burdens by himself. The way this conversation goes gives me the impression that Rem won't regain her memories anytime soon. This Rem is still discovering herself, and Subaru is still learning how to move on from seeing her as incomplete, a failure he needs to correct. Combined with the fact that we just saw her with her memories back in Arc 9, and redoing that would feel repetitive, and Rem's words before the reset about wanting this version of her to fall in love with him again, Rem fans might need to get those pitchforks ready. Moving on over to our friends in the Krusch camp, Ferris reflects on how useless he feels for not being able to help Krusch himself. Krusch is now healed, but accepting help from the Dragon Church not only doomed her political campaign, but was a personal betrayal too. She wants Lagunica to separate from the Divine Dragon because Volcanica failed to save the royal family from dying. That includes Fyore, a man she pretty clearly loved, but since she suffers from Amelia-itis, she never truly understood those feelings. This whole situation feels like a strong parallel to Subaru in Arc 3. In his feelings of uselessness, Ferris did something against the wishes of the woman he was supposed to serve. There's a lot of Arc 3 in the DNA of this arc, so I think we'll see it explore some similar themes. Unlike Subaru in that arc though, Ferris left on his own accord, rather than being dismissed. Subaru and the others find him in the royal graveyard, in a decent headspace all things considered. He tells them about Fyore at his tomb, and he talks about how he always hated all the competing candidates and their knights. Now look, Ferris is petty, but he's certainly putting up a mask here, the same way Otto and Reinhardt do. I can believe he always hated Subaru and Amelia, but not his buddies Julius and Reinhardt, come on. Did you notice something about this quote though? I actually do hate you. Amelia-sama, all the way back from the very beginning, this entire time, I've hated you. That sounds suspiciously similar to what Amelia says in the future trial, where we see the Capitol burning down. Amelia's quote is as follows. I really hate you. Really. All of it is true. Always. Since the moment I met you, I have hated you. It's not identical, but it's close enough to make me think they're connected. We've been scratching our heads trying to figure out who Amelia could hate this much. But what if she's just throwing Ferris's words back at him, after he does something horrible? She could be putting up the same mask he was, feigning callousness, as Reinhardt put it. Like I said before, some kind of betrayal or big rift is on the horizon for Amelia. I think Ferris will be the one behind it, or at least part of it. That makes even more sense to me given the next development. Ferris gets kidnapped by Russell Fellow. Russell was the guy involved in the negotiations with the Krusch camp regarding Subaru's phone, in case you didn't remember, it's been a while. And now he wants Ferris for his knowledge of the sacrament of the Immortal King, a way to resurrect the dead. That means another zombie apocalypse. Yay. What's his plan? Well, I do have a theory about that. To resurrect the royal family. Think about it. All the royals, or even one being alive again, would invalidate the royal selection, the same way that Fyore being confirmed as a surviving royal would. I think Russell, whether knowingly or unknowingly, is trying to beat Capella to the punch at taking over the royal selection. If he resurrects the royal family, he could potentially use them as puppets to do his bidding. Also, and this is maybe the biggest point of evidence, Ferris just came out of the royal graveyard. Graveyard, zombies, come on, it practically writes itself. Tappei specifically decided to show off the graveyard here in the first act, so I have a feeling it's going to come back. I can't say I'm a fan of the constant zombie plots at all, but this one has some great narrative potential. Imagine how emotionally devastating it would be for Ferris and Krusch to see a resurrected Fyore again, much like Wilhelm with Theresia. That could also provide much-needed closure for the characters. Krusch could finally work through her feelings and admit her love, and Fyore's words could help her move on past the grudge she has against Volcanica, all before an inevitable final farewell. Tragic, yes, but this is ReZero, we should expect that. I'm sure Capella wouldn't be happy about the royal family being brought back. She's probably Emerauda, a Lagunican princess who is assumed dead, and may be the one responsible for killing the rest of the royal family in the first place. That's my assumption, at least. There'd be some great potential with her seeing them alive again, and that's a natural way for us to learn her backstory as well. When Subaru, Amelia, Rem, and Beatrice meet with Fyore in the church, the conversation is chock full of references to Arc 3. Subaru and Fyore both bond over causing an embarrassing scene in the Capitol, and the others kinda throw Subaru under the bus for being a serial promise breaker. We get even more allusions to Arc 3 in the form of some not-so-subtle jabs at Subaru's insecurities as Amelia's knight. When Sakura, a member of the Dragon Church who accompanied Fyore, mentions hearing rumors about Subaru's reputation, but then drops the topic after Amelia and Beatrice vouch for him, we get this line. Beatrice on his lap and Amelia sitting to his right gave their stamps of approval, and while he was overjoyed, the gossip concerning Subaru was swept away in an unsatisfying manner. Fyore joins the conversation, and it directly turns to the subject of knights, letting us chew on this in the narration. The notoriety of the foremost knights was an important barometer for the royal selection. Sure enough, Subaru wondered if he had actually become Amelia's strength as a knight. The fact that he's still wondering about that at this point tells me there's some unresolved anxieties. Contrary to the way it's framed, though, I believe this has less to do with his actual performance as a knight and more about his role in her life. Can he really be her knight while also trying to be a romantic partner to her? Which role ends up superseding the other? Yep, I'm saying the topic of Amelia's feelings for him will finally come back in a meaningful way and pose some conflict. It's been a long time coming. Back in Chapter 1, Amelia mentions that she feels like she couldn't be Subaru's friend, that she doesn't want to. He's sort of in an undefined category for her at the current spot in the story. If both Subaru and Amelia have to come to terms with their feelings for each other in this arc, that would parallel Krusch and Fyore quite nicely. I don't really have too much to say about the reveal that Heinkel absorbed dragon blood and that's why he's so impossibly durable, other than to make the connection that despite almost certainly doing it to save his wife, Heinkel was acting against what she would have wanted, keeping up with the trend of what we've seen in this arc so far. In Arc 9, he acknowledges that Luana probably wouldn't even want to face him after learning about what he did during that arc, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that unfold here. Everyone gets their own Arc 3 crash out. You may have noticed that I haven't talked much about Krusch herself, despite this being a Krusch-centered arc. Well, they say to save the best for last, right? Miklatov of the Council of Elders invites Subaru to his manor for a private discussion about an unsaid matter. It turns out Subaru wasn't the only one invited, however. As he makes his way there, he crosses paths with Tiga, another member of the Dragon Church who came with Fyore. Their small talk is cut short when they discover the manor is littered with dead bodies, cleaved in half. Standing there by Miklatov's corpse is Krusch, suited up and speaking like her past self before her memories were eaten. When she sees Subaru, she asks if he's quote-unquote the real one. Okay, so first of all, wow, that's a great cliffhanger. Second of all, what the hell is going on here? A few possibilities come to mind. It would have been pretty easy for Fyore to do something nefarious to her while performing the healing sacrament, considering the text explicitly tells us the sacrament had to be done in private. We really have no clue what happened behind those doors. So maybe Fyore turned her into some kind of sleeper agent. Along those lines, there's also the possibility that Krusch is actually dead, and has simply been resurrected like Teresia was, a corpse soldier. Or, and this is the one I'm banking on, dream magic. Again, it must have been introduced for a reason. If Krusch's mind was implanted with the idea that everyone around her were dangerous fakes, that would make perfect sense. Or maybe Krusch is right. Capella can transform people after all. Maybe they all were imposters and Miklatov was compromised. I doubt it considering just how many people she killed, but that certainly would be a twist. Maybe Subaru and Tiga were being lured into an assassination attempt, and Krusch saved their lives. One big reason I'd rule that out though is her eye patch. Why would her eye still be hidden? Every other part of her seems to be in good shape. In the past, we've seen that eyes often have some kind of visual indicator if someone is influenced by an outside force. The authority of wrath in the anime causes the eyes of those possessed to go red, and soul marriage causes flames to appear in people's eyes. Maybe dream magic has some kind of tell like that too. If Krusch is influenced to go on a murderous rampage, killing real people she claims are fakes, that situation could be great for Capella. It makes anyone who raises concerns over people being replaced look insane and dangerous. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. This is the second time I've made a video about the novels, but my first time doing a breakdown of a whole volume like this, so let me know what you thought about it. I'd like to make more for the rest of the arc if it's something you guys find valuable. It'll be fun to revisit this one as it progresses to see how off base I was. I don't think the rest of them will be this long though, but if you have any ideas or suggestions, feel free to let me know. This style of video is completely subject to change. I also just want to give a huge shout out to Witch Cult Translations for all the amazing work that they do. I mean, these videos would literally not even be possible without their translations. Keep your chin up. Later, brother.